My name is Ruth Brown. I'm 65 years old now, with gray hair that time has given me and a memory that doesn't let me forget anything. Can I ask you something? What would you do if you found your own daughter shivering outside a house where everyone was laughing and toasting to the warmth of a fireplace? Because that's what I saw that Christmas Eve. You know, we grow old thinking we've seen it all, but there are scenes that not even age prepares. I have always been a strong, calloused woman, wow, who taught discipline and respect to many young people, but nothing hurt me more than seeing my daughter outside that house, huddled together, as if she were a nuisance, and inside, her husband's family toasting, smiling, as if she didn't exist. If you've stayed this far, it's because something called you. Maybe it's the pain that feels like yours, or the curiosity to know how far a mother can go for who she has generated. Well, I'll tell you. Today, I learned it could go down to you will understand what happened that night. And more than that, you will understand what happens when a mother chooses not to be silent. Not all silence is weakness. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. That night changed everything, because it wasn't just the cold that cut the air, nor just the snow falling in the garden of that beautiful house. That's what I saw there, between the Christmas lights and the glasses of wine. My daughter, huddled outside, shivering, without shoes, while the others toasted, now warmed by the fireplace and by indifference. And what did I do after that? Well, this will still hurt anyone who listens. But before opening this wound, I wanted to ask for something simple. If this story has touched you in any way, if you know the weight of a silence that hurts, or have ever felt the pain of seeing someone you love being left aside, subscribe here to the channel and leave your like. Not for me, but for this story to reach those who also need to remember that they are not alone. Because when we share these memories, no matter how painful they are, we find other voices, other women who have experienced the same. And that, my daughter, is a hug that crosses the screen. Thank you for being here with me. I woke up early that morning. As usual, the body gets used to the silence of the house, with the noise of the clock on the wall, marking a time that no longer runs for me. I made my black coffee. Bitter as I like it, and sat on the chair on the porch. Well, Seattle was still covered in the fine fog, but my thought, he had already traveled to Boise. It had been more than 8 months since I had seen my daughter. Emily, one-eyed, so had a child now. She married a boy named Ryan Whitlock 6 years ago. A traditional family, wow. One of those that has a name in a club and French wine on the shelf. But little humility in their chest. In the beginning, I tried to see the good in him, as every mother tries. But over time, I began to feel my daughter going out, like a candle forgotten in a corner. Calls have decreased. The words turned cold. Now, it's okay, Mom. She said. But the voice The voice did not lie. Not so I stumbled. Even so, those, when December came, I thought, later, I might hear Tom. Going there, sit out, down. I bring a gift, knock on the door, and spend supper with her. We always had this thing of making Grandma Margot's recipes together. Cinnamon cake, turkey stuffed with apple, and the walnut cookie that Emily loved to make with me since she was little. That's what I wanted to relive. A simple gesture. Nan sighed. Only love. I bought the ticket with the money from my taekwondo classes at the community center. I made a beautiful wrap with a cookbook she liked and a navy scarf that I knitted myself. I remember to this day the taxi driver saying Boise is freezing. Ma'am, wrap up warm. I laughed, but inside, something told me that the cold was not going to be just in the weather. When the car turned onto West Jefferson Street and stopped in front of their house, I saw the lights on. People coming in and out. Lots of laughter. Children running. One God seemed wide. I stashed in order there when I casted you. Loud music. A beautiful tree. One of those that look like from a magazine. For a moment, I breathed a sigh of relief. She must be happy. Maybe I exaggerated. I thought, no. I got out of the car with cold hands and my heart beating, like the time I went to see Emily's new school. But that's when I saw it. My daughter, sitting outside the house, on the balcony, alone. I have seen her to Cockland. She wore only a thin wool blouse. Shrugged. Mine, native bus. Bare feet touching the icy cement. The face. That face. It was white as the snow that was beginning to fall. She looked at me now, but didn't smile. He only murmured, wow. Mother? Mother. I ran to her, took off my coat and wrapped my body around her. Her skin burned with cold, and her hands trembled as if her body were in shock. And inside the house, the guests laughing, toasting, now, singing, how. No one seemed to notice that she was there, freezing. Not her husband, not her mother-in-law, not his sister. I know. Nothing. Silence. At that time, I felt such a heavy weight on my chest that I thought I was going to fall. Emily, the Tauponashis, and sang. My daughter, one of Maya, was outside her own house, like an animal that bothers you, and no one did anything. Let me ask you something that is listening to me. How does a mother hold the pain of seeing her daughter being treated as nothing? Because I didn't hold back. There are times in life when we don't have anything else to say. He just feels it. And that moment, that was it. Only pain and impotence. Moment of reflection to request for comment. And I know I'm not the only one who's experienced something like this. Because we give everything. Right? Love. Time. I say. Life. And one day, he sees those we love being despised by those he promised to take care of. If you've ever felt that pain of seeing someone you love being erased, comment below with an I believe or I've lived it. Sometimes a word is enough for us to know that we are not alone on this road. I took my daughter to the car. She could barely walk properly. On the way to the hospital, she told me, in a broken voice, that she only came down to get some air because Evelyn, her mother-in-law, I've seen, said she was spoiling the atmosphere of the party. And Ryan, her husband, he just said, well, go outside and cool your head. And they closed the door. They closed the door. Yeah. At that moment, inside me, a part broke, but another woke up. Something had to be done. Why? All my showed stuff well. I didn't know exactly what or how, but something had to change. Because if even Christmas has become a place of abandonment, now, what was left of the world? But what I didn't know yet, it was what awaited me when I decided to enter that house, because the worst was yet to come. And I was about to hear things that no mother should hear. Are you ready to know what I heard in that dining room? After we left the hospital, and I was sure that her blood pressure had stabilized, that there was no risk of severe hypothermia, I asked the driver to drop us off at the Whitlock house. Emily held my arm with both hands, as she did when she was little and afraid of thunder. She didn't want to go back. I knew it. But there was something about that night, a force inside me that pushed me to face that. I needed to see with my own eyes what they were doing to my daughter, and he needed to show her that no one had the right to treat her like that, least of all a family that claimed to be respectful. As soon as we arrived, Emily stayed in the car. Nas conchadam. Mom, please. It doesn't go there. No. They're going to humiliate you too. I looked at her and said softly, "More than it influence, fat conachum. Let it be up to me now." As I climbed the steps of the porch, the wind seemed stronger. How? As if trying to push me back. But I knocked on the door firmly. Evelyn, no child, her sound, the mother-in-law. Where do you still paranoia? We and I see, answered the answer. She had a glass of wine in her hand, when quite still, all dressed up, as if nothing had happened. Her face contorted when she saw me. Why, Ruth, ow, what an unpleasant surprise. That tone, no, that fine irony, it just made me more sure I was in the right place. I entered without asking permission. What? The house smelled of roast meat and hypocrisy. Ryan appeared right behind, with his tie crooked and a fake smile. "Is Emily okay?" he asked, as if it were the first time he remembered her that night. I didn't answer. Well, I just walked into the living room and looked around. The pictures on the walls, the tree full of gifts, none with my daughter's name, and the faces of people who pretended not to notice my presence. I sat on the couch, upright, as if in a fighting position, without having to raise my voice. Ryan sat on the other side and opened his mouth to speak. It was then that I heard it. "This girl always had a loose screw," said Abigail, Ryan's sister. "Now, you can't be a mother or a wife. He lives crying for nothing." Evelyn added, "No, well." She always used this talk of sadness as an excuse to be spoiled. Since the abortion, Ah, it only drags itself around the house like a burden. And they laughed. They laughed. They laughed as if they hadn't kicked a woman who was already on the ground. As if losing a child was a laughing stock. My fingers closed on the arm of the armchair. I felt the wood creak, but he didn't say a word, because sometimes silence is what scares the most. And in that silence, I swore to myself that it wasn't going to stay like this. But what no one there expected was what I would discover the next day. Something hidden under documents, beautiful names, and fake smiles. Something that would show that that night was just the beginning. Have you ever had the feeling that the truth is right under everyone's nose, but no one sees it? Well, then, get ready, because what comes now will change everything. I left that house with their words burning on my back, as if they had crossed out my name along with my daughter's. Emily was still in the car, her eyes downcast, her arms curled up inside the coat ID given her last fall. When he saw me, why, he didn't ask anything. He just leaned his head against the glass and was silent. How? I asked the driver to take us straight to the medical center. Well, not because of her body, which had already received basic care, but because I knew there was another, much deeper wound that wasn't going to show up on any blood test. While she was talking to the nurse, I went to the lobby to get a coffee, and that's where it happened. Wow, a blond boy in a simple suit, bumping into his haste, spilled coffee on his own tie. And counted their I sure caught you a tie. I apologized, even though I was not guilty. He laughed. All right, ma'am, hard day. I asked him if he worked there. No, I'm a lawyer. Oh, ciao. I came to follow a case of medical negligence. I hesitated for a second. And then something inside me, perhaps the instinct that only a mother has, made me ask, do you understand psychological abuse? He arched his eyebrow. I see. I know. I took a napkin from the table. Well, so, right here. I took a napkin from the table, wrote my name and my daughter's, and handed it to him firmly. Ruth Brown, Emily Brown Whitlock. They are destroying my daughter, and they think no one is watching. He looked at the paper. Oh, so she said in a town. Washer than you? Then at me, and said, no, why, call me after Christmas. We talk. I went back to the car and didn't tell Emily anything. I didn't want to raise hopes ahead of time. But that night, lying on the couch of a small flat, rented by the hour, I heard my daughter crying in the bathroom. It wasn't loud crying. It was a muffled sob, as if even her tears were ashamed. And there I was, looking at the ceiling, feeling that something inside me was about to break. The next day, when we went to pick up the bag, Emily had left at the Whitlock house. I asked her to stay in the car again. I said it was better this way, that I was just going to go in, get it, and leave. But I entered with eagle eyes, and it was in the hallway, next to the laundry. That saw an envelope with my name on it. Curious, I opened it. It was a credit card bill, but it wasn't my card. It was a new one with my full name, old address, and high limit. And the worst, several purchases made in the last few months. Expensive stores, beauty salon, car rental, a noise job, restaurants in names I didn't even know. That wasn't just contempt. It was use. It was theft disguised as coexistence. They were even using me backstage. I went back to the car in silence, but inside me, no, something changed. Oh, because when a mother finds out that they are even using her name to humiliate those she loves, things change. But what I didn't know yet, and what I was about to discover, was that this envelope was just the first thread of a much dirtier ball of yarn than I imagined, and that someone very close to me was involved in all this. Want to know who? So listen carefully to what comes next. I returned to Seattle with a full head and a burning heart. Emily stayed with me in a small rented room in the back of a house of retired ladies who rent space to travelers. The place was simple but quiet, clean, and most of all, insurance. For the first time in a long time, she slept a whole night without needing to take medicine. Oh, not me. I spent the night sitting on the floor, loose tongue, organizing papers, trying to understand how far the dirt of that family went. The envelope with the card accompanied me like a stone in the shoe. The next day, I went to the bank. I presented myself with my documents, asked for access to the statements, and confirmed everything. Someone used my name to open a parallel account with high credit loan, operated by third parties. It was shopping, booking, traveling. There was even a stay at a winery in Oregon, the same week that Emily was hospitalized for one of the miscarriages. There, at that bank counter, I felt something tear inside me. It was as if they had torn my name from my own history. I left there and went straight to the house of an old friend of mine. Once I cut him too, and once just said it all. Thomas Klein. We were colleagues when I was still teaching at the community center. He was young at the time, studying law. Today, he is a lawyer with a respected name in the neighborhood. I explained everything. I showed the papers. He listened to me in silence, then took off his glasses and said, Ruth, this is serious, but it's just the surface. It'll help you, but if we go all the way, there will be no turning back. I took a deep breath. Thomas, I've gone too far to go back now. He smiled slightly. This. And there, we began to assemble the dossier. Thomas asked for access to more documents. He asked me to get Emily's signature. So we could file an official complaint. When I showed her everything, it was as if a mirror broke. She trembled. No, but, said in a firm voice, they won't shut me up anymore. Mom. That same day, Thomas called a contact of his in the Boise police, a former student of mine named Jake Miller, a good guy, raised by a single mother. Like Emily. Jake was outraged by what he heard. Leave it to me, Ma. If there's anything hidden in this story, He'll find it. No. And he did. Ah. It was he who managed, through a discreet warrant, the movements of the couple's joint account. New account. We discovered that Ryan transferred small amounts of money from Emily's account to his sister's account, Abigail. Then Peter Khan, Luther Disciplish, every month, and then to a third account, which was in the name of, whoa, mystery, from a cousin of Ryan's, whom I never met, a certain Brad Whitlock. That was a detour, a deviation made with my daughter's money, and with my name. That family was living like royalty at the expense of who they called a burden. Ah, I took a deep breath and looked at Thomas. We will go to the end. He nodded. How? We prepared the paperwork to open the civil process, and we began to record every detail. Evidence, dates, testimonies. Emily began to write everything down in a blue notebook. Memories, humiliations, phrases she heard. Noun, no tuna now, a tuna crashed a carpet. It was as if each word written was a way to cleanse the soul. And it was then, at that moment between paperwork and contained tears, that I realized my daughter was coming back to life. Slowly. Yes, but coming back, and with you, McCown. I was ready to be the shield she always needed. I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story with every piece that still hurts me. If you're listening, if this story is hitting any part of your life, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you. And sometimes, just knowing that someone is listening, it already makes us feel a little less alone in this world. But let me tell you, we thought we had seen everything. But in the first meeting with Ryan, face to face, with the lawyer next door, that I discovered the size of the cowardice he was capable of. Can you imagine what he said, looking into my eyes, trying to get rid of it? Well, that's what you're going to hear now, because it was at this meeting that the mask fell for good. The day of the meeting arrived. It was a cold morning, and clear skies. One of those when the cold enters through the bones, but our hearts are already red hot, even before leaving home. I went with my hair up, simple clothes, clean shoes, nothing flashy, only presents. Emily went with me, but stayed outside the room with Thomas. It was too early for her to face the face of the one who made her cry for so many months in a row. On the other side of the table, Ryan walked in with his lawyer, a pale man, too young, too arrogant. They expected to find me nervous, frail, perhaps begging for some explanation. But I just sat down, folded my hands on my knees, and looked into the eyes of the man who once called my daughter love. He was the first to speak. Mrs. Ruth, I am very sorry for all the misunderstanding, but I assure you, everything that was done was with Emily's consent. A dry smile, including leaving it on the porch at Christmas. While you toasted, he cleared his throat, straightened his tie, and said, Leo, underestimately, I told her she needed some time alone. I was emotionally unstable. This is common in depressive crises. The word unstable made me nauseous, as they like to use this as a shield. How they like to reverse the game. Knew out when that she wished to paint the victim as crazy. I showed him the copy of the credit card. He feigned surprise. I didn't know that. Maybe it was an administrative error. I also handed over the bank statements. These monthly deposits for your sister Abigail. Was it a mistake, too? He started swinging his leg, his finger hitting the table. His lawyer asked for a break. Thomas refused. I kept my gaze steady. It was then that he said the phrase that never left my head. Emily has always had problems. You know, we just tried to maintain the stability of the family. Taking care of her was difficult. I took a deep breath, leaned back in my chair, and said, "Wow, Ryan, taking care of someone is not grief. It's a pact. And if you didn't know that, you never deserved to be married to my daughter." When the child had stopped her song, the room fell silent. Martin Seward. His lawyer collected the papers. "We will analyze it calmly. We will be in touch." They left without facing anyone. When I returned to the reception, Emily was sitting with her hands clasped, her eyes swollen. Did you say anything?" he asked. Yes, he did. He talked too much, but not with truth, just afraid. She lowered her head. No, they're going to get revenge. Mom, I held her hands. So let them try, because now we have a name, paper, witness, and courage. In the days that followed, we put together a detailed timeline with Thomas. We connect dates, values, names, everything crossed. And it was then, between one spreadsheet and another, that one of the transfers caught our attention. A higher value than the others, sent to Abigail's name, in the same month that Emily was in the hospital, and this amount was used to pay for a cosmetic treatment in New York. Coincidence? Perhaps. But do you know what we found out next? That Abigail wore a business card in the name of the law firm where Harold Whitlock, Ryan's father, was a founding partner. That's when everything changed in size, because he was no longer just a bad character son-in-law. It was an entire family using my daughter's name, and mine, to maintain an image of success built on the pain of others. Can you imagine what we felt when we understood that this went far beyond what we thought? Well, prepare your heart. Nice. Because the next name that appeared in this story, it was the last one I expected to see involved. And it hurt. How it hurt. Thomas spread the worksheets on his living room table. And I stood, hands resting on the back of the chair, reading, line by line, as if praying before an altar. The numbers tell stories that people swear no one will read. And there, hidden in digits and acronyms, was the map of what they had been doing to my daughter. Look at that. Ruth Miller. Thomas said, Not pointing with his pen, a transfer greater than the others. In the month in which Emily was hospitalized, in the bank's note would cease, a code that led to an accounting service used by Harold's company. We follow the thread. Jake, on the other side, with the radio in his pocket and a crumpled notebook in his hand, called a contact of his at the registry office and asked for a favor from an old student. In the late afternoon, chapters. An email arrived with a document attached. I clicked. It took me a few seconds to understand. There was a credit authorization with my name and my old data, Lisa. Why? Even my phone number from when I still lived in Tacoma. But what made me sit down was the bottom line. Co-responsible. I read it twice. 3. No. It didn't make sense. The name there was someone who had shared a Christmas table with me for years, who held Emily in his lap when she was born. She was born. Who showed up with flowers at my wedding wake. Carl Brown. Down. My husband's younger brother. No. The uncle who took Emily fishing in the summer. The man who always called me sister. What in is Chaptanota? That can't be right, I whispered. Now. And my voice sounded like someone else's. Thomas took off his glasses, rested his chin on his hand. The documents match. Ruth. Wow. Signature. No. And statute. Address. Up to the date of the DMV. They did it together. I got up without realizing it. I went to the window. It was raining, finally, and the cars passed by with that sound of rain that wets old memories. I thought of Carl laughing out loud at Sunday lunches, that way of squeezing my shoulder when he wanted to say he was by my side, and I felt a nausea that didn't come from my stomach. It came from the soul. Thomas was delicate. Sometimes they call us to help with the score. You promise that we just have to lend the name for a few months. But here it was not an innocent loan. This is part of the mechanism. Without his name and without his signature, none of this opened. Jake leaned against the door frame. Do you want me to go talk to him? Mrs. Ruth? I shook my head. No, I'm going. I am. I returned home with the sky already dark. Emily was sitting at the table. Town. Until now. And no contract station, he's up there, fiddling with a blue notebook. He wrote loose phrases, dates, memories. When he saw me, nay, he tried to smile. Lee, how did that job? Today I remembered Grandma Margot's kitchen, the smell of cinnamon that was on the curtain. I sat next to her. I didn't tell you about Carl. Not at that time. We will smell this smell again. My love, yes, it will. And I cooked a simple soup, and we ate slowly, like someone chewing a hard day to sleep. Later, when Emily fell asleep, thus I grabbed my coat and left. Carl's address was in Nampa, a low house with a shed next to it. He took his time. Hyde looks appeared in flip-flops with an old Seattle Mariners t-shirt. When he saw me, when He opened his arms. Ruth, what a good surprise. I couldn't repay him. He noticed. Ew, how? Did something happen? Entered. No. I was direct. Signature of co-responsible. Card in my name. Credit. Authorization. Do you remember that? He turned pale as if the light had been cut off. Ruth. I thought you knew. Harold said. Knew no one until. Harold said what? I cut off. He fumbled. That it was to help Emily get credit. That you had authorized it. That it was only for a few months. I didn't want to deny it. He said you were busy, traveling, and that you had said yes. The lie has a smell, and that smell took over the room. Carl, you looked me in the eye. Ace, at my house. And you didn't ask me anything? Did you sign my name underneath a hallway conversation? He was speechless. He lowered his head like a boy who knows he ruined a toy that wasn't his. I was a coward. Oh, did he? I still. Ruth. Whoa, he said. Oh, no. And I was silly. Wow, I was silly. I breathed. I planted my feet on the ground. It's not me you have to apologize for. He nodded. No. I'm going to Boise. Wow. I talk to them. I tell the truth. No. I didn't answer at the time. I walked down the 4 steps of the balcony, feeling that each step took me away from the Carl I remembered, and closer to the man who, unintentionally or unwillingly, had pushed my daughter into the hole. The wind hit my face. I closed my coat. On the way back, I stopped in the empty parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket and cried inside the car. Silently. Well, that was still well. How concerned severe. It was not crying of despair. It was mourning. I fight for a trust that would never be the same again. I returned home almost midnight. Emily was awake, sitting on the bed. Oh, hugging her body. Mom, she whispered. I had a dream. I was in our old kitchen, and you said, stay with me, and now I know the way. I sat next to her and kissed her forehead. I know. Emily, now I know, and I talk to you who are listening to me. Sometimes life pushes us to places where courage seems small, but trust me. What you will hear until the end will show you that we can walk, even with a patched heart. The next day, Laura Thomas scheduled a session with Emily's therapist, Dr. Nell Lynn Mon, to collect a detailed report. The 3 of us went. The room had a warm light, a cream-colored armchair, and the discreet smell of lavender. Emily spoke slowly, unhurriedly, like someone picking up shards of glass on a tiled floor. The doctor heard everything and, in the end, how, said, Daniel, when, on the attack of myself, Rector's own sight, severe depression, aggravated by recurrent grief, and a hostile environment. She needs support and total withdrawal. Will you? It was a role. I know. But sometimes a role is the missing shield. We left there and went straight to Thomas' office. He was already waiting for us with a brown envelope. Here, you have the petitions ready. A civil for misuse of identity and embezzlement. Another with a request for separation based on negligence and psychological abuse. I need the signature. Well, no problem. Emily, my daughter held the pen. Will you? For a moment, the hand trembled. I leaned mine over the top, and she then signed, "No." When the sound of the pen scratched the paper, I felt as if an old door had finally opened. At night, I lay down and didn't fall asleep. I listened to the sound of the heater, remembering the icy balcony of Boise's and my daughter's pale face. The anger had passed. What remained was a tranquil certainty, which weighs less than anger and more than fear. It was the certainty that those people would no longer decide for us. I picked up the phone and wrote Carl a short message. "Tomorrow at 9 at Thomas' office. If there is still truth in you, be there." He replied in 2 minutes. "Ah, I will." I closed my eyes and knew. For the first time in many days, I was able to breathe without remembering the door closing on my daughter's back. But I still didn't know that before 9 a.m. and stay on the board. Someone would try to silence us with a dark envelope pushed under our door, full of words that were not a warning. They were threats. Can you imagine what was written? Because it was this letter that turned the key to what would come next. The letter arrived before sunrise. I was making coffee when I heard the dry sound of paper being pushed under the door. I thought it was propaganda, but when I saw the black envelope, I felt a shiver run down my spine. My name was written with a golden pen, in crooked letters, as if they were in a hurry or angry. I opened it carefully. Inside, a sheet folded into 3. The words were short, direct, sharp. "Think carefully before continuing. There are things that are better left buried for your daughter." There was no signature, but I recognized the perfume. That cheap jasmine scent that Evelyn had been using since the first day I met her. That sweet, cloying aroma that always came before her poisonous words. I sat in the chair. Oh, the envelope in my hands shaking. The fear was not for me. It was for Emily. I knew that this family had money, connections, and a coldness that was not measured in degrees, but in silences. When Thomas arrived, I showed him the letter. He read it without saying anything, then put it away in transparent plastic. "This is intimidation, and if they are trying to scare, it is because the process is moving where it should not." Jake appeared shortly after, uniform still on his body, with a hard look. "I've seen it before. They want to make you stop without having to get your hands dirty. But it won't work. Not if it's up to me." I took a deep breath and looked at him. "Jake, you only promise me one thing. It promises that if something happens to me, you won't leave Emily alone." He replied without hesitation, "No, you have my word." When he left, I looked out the window. The street seemed quiet, but there was something different that morning. The sound of birds seemed distant. The wind no longer smelled of fresh coffee. Only fear. Emily woke up and noticed my face. "Mom, did something happen?" I didn't mean to lie. I showed the envelope. Oh. She read it and turned pale. They will not stop. Moon. We sit it out. Mom. They always get what they want. I held her face in my hands. Not this time, Lynyards. Emily, this time. We are the ones who decide. She collapsed on my shoulder and cried softly. No. And I tell you, there is no greater pain for a mother than to see the fear in her own child's eyes and not be able to tear him away, because we don't scare away fear with hugs, astonish with courage, and courage, sometimes, is the only coat left when the world tries to make us naked. I closed my eyes for a moment and thought about how many mothers go through this, watching their children suffer for injustices they didn't deserve, trying to hold the weight of the world with their own hands. And if you've ever experienced something like this, if you've ever felt that fear tried to silence you, comment there so I know I'm not alone. Right, I understand, or I know how it is. Because when we share the pain, it gets a little lighter. No, isn't it? Later, yeah, Archtin Masuo, I'll not talk, he's gone. Carl showed up at the door, punctually at 9. He had a briefcase in his hand and deep dark circles under his eyes. Ruth, I brought everything. My receipts, Harold's messages, she don't you orders. Everything he asked me to sign. He handed it to Thomas, who took him inside. Wow. Emily sat on the couch, staring at the floor. No. Her silence meant more to me than any words. After almost an hour, Thomas left with a grave expression. He confirmed everything. Harold set up the operation with the help of an accountant friend, and Evelyn was the one who made the transfers. Ryan was just a facade. I felt my body freeze, and they're going to pay, aren't they? Thomas looked at me cautiously. We will denounce it. But, Ruth, this goes a long way, and it's going to hurt more before it hurts less. I nodded. No, it hurt too much to stop now. In the following days, local news began to talk about the Whitlock case. The headline was subtle. Former judge's family accused of fraud and misappropriation. But for me, it was like thunder. Finally, until someone other than us was listening. Jake called me that night. You are being watched. Ruth, what now? Be careful. And if you can, change places for a few days. I didn't want to show fear. But the sound of his voice carried an urgency that crossed me. I packed my bags in a hurry. We went to a simple inn in the mountains. In the car, no, he said to the sound. I still by, where the air is so cold that it takes your breath away. There, well, and she was Sue. Emily began to draw again. What did she buy? Hand, birds, trees, open windows. It was her way of catching her breath. I watched her and thought, even wounded, now, my daughter still found beauty. And that, for me, was a miracle. During a hike along the snow-covered trail, she told me something I have never forgotten. Mom, maybe what they took from us is not the most important thing. Maybe what matters is what's left. I stopped, took a deep breath, and realized that she was right. What was left was love, that kind of love that neither cold, nor lies, nor money can bury. On the way back to the inn, I found Jake leaning against the car. He had come unannounced, bringing news. Ruth Harold filed an injunction to try to stop the process. They are alleging defamation and abuse of authority. My chest tightened. Are they afraid? He nodded. "Mm, they are. Nay, I'll tidum Sirakinataksha. And when powerful people are afraid, they tend to react badly." I looked at the horizon, where the sun hid behind the mountains and the sky was painted orange. I felt a strong feeling, as if something big was approaching. Jake, if they came here, Atten, they'll try something else, won't they? He did not answer. He only looked away, and it was there, now, in that silence, that understood the storm had not yet passed, because what happened the next night, in that same inn, under the same calm sky, would change it all over again, and, in a way, I'll never forget. Can you imagine what I found when I woke up in the middle of the night? I woke up in the middle of the night with a sound that was not part of the calm of that inn. It was a dry crack coming from outside, no one, as if someone had stepped on snow-covered branches. The read 2:17 Tom. For a second, no nice, or second, I thought it was just the wind. He often plays with the wood of the windows in that bitter cold. But then I heard another noise. A creaking doorknob. Instinct spoke louder. I sat on the bed slowly. Wow. My heart racing. Now, Emily slept in the next room, and the silence of the hallway was so heavy that even her breathing seemed to rumble. I put on my coat, grabbed the small flashlight from the bedside table, and left, barefoot, feeling the icy floor underfoot. The corridor was dark, only a light bulb flashing at the end. I went down the steps carefully. When I got to the front desk, I saw the back door half open. Snow was piling up on the doorframe, as if someone had just left. The light of the flashlight flickered in my hand. "Is there anyone there?" I asked, my hoarse voice breaking the silence. No response. I took 2 steps, and that's when I saw the figure, a shadow crossing the parking lot, heading toward the road. Now, I ran to the balcony, the wind cutting my face, but the figure was already disappearing in the fog. In the snow, there were marks of big man's boots. I went back inside with my chest heaving. I locked all the doors, closed the windows, and went straight to Emily's room. She was still asleep now, her face serene, her hands curled under the pillow. I sat next to her, and it took me a while to be able to breathe normally again. When dawn came, none came. I told her what happened. "Do you think it was one of them?" "Mom?" she asked, her voice weak. "I think it was a warning," I replied. "No." I replied. Jake arrived mid-morning, his uniform covered in snow. I called him inside and showed him the footprints. He analyzed it in silence, then made an affirmative gesture. Wow, this is a tactical boot brand. Military or police? I was floored. None? Do you think anyone from the corporation? Zara. He shook his head in frustration. I can't say, but Harold has friends everywhere. Ruth, people who turn a blind eye when money talks loudly. Fear mixed with anger. Well, so let him bring whoever he wants. I'm not going to stop now. Jake nodded. No, sister. But I saw in his eyes that he was worried. We went back inside, and he called Thomas. In less than an hour. Yeah. The lawyer arrived, bringing new information. The press is getting heavy, and a journalist from Boise wants to interview you and Emily. That can help. I hesitated. What if it's dangerous? He replied without thinking. Hush. It's dangerous enough to be silent. Oh. Emily overheard the conversation and was silent for a few minutes. Then he approached and said, I want to talk. I want to tell you everything. Maybe, if people know, they will stop thinking that I made it up. You understand, Helm. It was the first time I saw a twinkle in her eyes in months. We recorded the interview 2 days later. In a small cafe near the lake, the reporter was a young man, with a calm voice, a respectful manner. He started with simple questions, but soon got to the point. Why, Emily, Emily, what did you feel that Christmas Eve? She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. I felt that I no longer existed. That love had a limit, and that I had crossed it. I couldn't hold back the tears. The reporter turned off the recorder. You. Emotional. I know. You are brave. This will inspire a lot of people. When the article came out, the repercussion was greater than we expected. The networks were filled with messages of support, and the story won the entire state. But along with the support came danger. On the 3rd day after publication, a black car parked for hours in front of the inn. Jake checked the license plate. It was registered in the name of a fictitious Idaho Falls company, one of many that Harold used. They're watching you, Ruth, he said. How? But now the tables have turned. Now the press is on your side. They can no longer hide what they have done. That night, while Emily slept, I stared out the window, watching the snowflakes slowly falling, and I felt something different. It wasn't fear. It was a strange calm, as if I knew that the worst was yet to come, but that I had already stopped running away from it. Sometimes, what scares us the most is not the enemy that comes from outside, but the one that wakes up inside us when pain turns into courage. And I felt that inside me there was a new strength, made up of anger, love, and faith. The next day, Thomas called us with news. Ruth. The judge accepted the complaint. They're going to have to answer. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Now, I cannot desire, as that orders to be. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and thanked me in silence. Emily hugged me, crying, Mom, Hans, will we now be able to live in peace? I didn't answer, because peace is something that is conquered one piece at a time. Oh, and I knew that there were still thorns in the way. Jake knocked on the door later with a manila envelope. Oh, Ruth, you need to see this. It was a copy of a court order. Harold was asking for a removal order against me, alleging intimidation and defamation. I laughed. A short, an tired laugh. I old nothing silkshabetchi. They can't stand losing control, can they? Jake looked at me seriously. No. And when people like that lose control, they mess up. Oh. I stared at him for a few seconds and felt a different chill run down my spine. Not the cold of the snow, but the cold of one who senses that the enemy is approaching. I put the paper in the drawer and said quietly, "Why, let them come. I am ready. I but deep down, I knew no one is really ready when the past decides to knock on the door. And that night, he crashed in a way I never imagined. Can you guess who showed up in front of our door with a look full of guilt and a secret that would change everything I had believed until then? When I opened the door, for a moment I thought I was seeing a ghost. It was Ryan. The man who destroyed my daughter stood there in front of me, his face downcast, his eyes sunken, his coat soaked in snow. He seemed like another being, smaller, broken, and your station. Emily, who was in the room, turned pale. "What are you doing here?" I asked, with a coldness that even I didn't know I had. He lowered his head. "Oh, well, I need to talk to you." My instinct was to close the door, but something in his gaze, that kind of look that mixes guilt and fear, made me hesitate. I let him in, but kept my hand firmly on the handle, as if to say one false step. "And you get out of here." He stood still, without the courage to sit down. Emily pulled away, her whole body tense. "What do you want, Ryan?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Ooh." He took a deep breath. Ryan sound, ran his hand through his hair, and said something I never expected to hear. "My father, that he is no longer in control. Things were out of his reach. And I want to fix what I did." Those words were hanging in the air, too heavy. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or send him away. "Fix it?" I repeated. "Wow. After everything you did to my daughter? No. After letting it freeze outside your own house? There's no fix for this." Ryan lowered his eyes. "I know. And that's why I came. They're going after you, Ruth. No. Harold is desperate. No. He wants to erase everything, including, now, you." The silence that came after was deadly. Emily cringed, and I felt my heart race. "What do you mean by erase?" I asked. He looked at me, his face pale. "Now, they hired someone. I busy your car. A guy named Miller. Mill. He was once a security guard at the court. Harold paid him to give him a scare, but the man is not one to give light scares." I felt the ground disappear under my feet. "Did you bring this here?" Ryan, did it bring this danger to my daughter? He shook his head in distress. No, Hazen. I came to warn you. I want to help. I kept copies of my father's company documents, the transfers. There is evidence that they embezzled money and laundered everything in your name. If I deliver this, you are protected. I looked at him and saw the despair. For the first time, it was not pretense. It was true fear. Why now? I asked. Because they discarded me too, he replied. Ha! Evelyn said that I became a burden. They're so feisty. That should disappear for a while. The man who had once been arrogant and cruel now trembled before me. I don't want forgiveness. Kneel down. I sit some at a pie. That must all. Ruth, I just want to stop him from doing the same to you. I sat slowly, trying to understand if it was real or another trap. Emily cried silently, looking at the floor. Joe, that little card. Ryan took a flash drive out of his pocket and put it on the table. Everything is here. Accounts, transfers, recordings. But if you go after it, you need to act fast. I stared at the object as if looking at a gun. He knew that that small piece of metal could become both a salvation and a sentence. I took a deep breath. Thomas needs to see that, and so is Jake. Ryan nodded. I'll stay hidden until you decide what to do. He left the same night, leaving the mark of his boots in the snow. I stood at the window watching his figure disappear on the white road. Part of me wanted to believe it. Another part shouted that it was too late. I sat at the table, the pen drive in my hands. The wood seemed to pulsate under my fingers. Emily approached, now hesitantly. Mom, do you think he's telling the truth? I sighed. I think that when fear comes, even those who have lied their whole lives start to say what they should have said before. I spent the rest of the night without sleep, alternating between anger and doubt. When the sun came up, I called Thomas. He came immediately. Wow. So did Jake. We connected the pen drive to the laptop. And what appeared on the screen made the blood run cold. Hundreds of transfer records, forged statements, forged signatures, all in Harold Whitlock's name. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his face serious. With that, we take him down. Jake, however, didn't seem relieved. It does, yes, but he will not fall silent. I looked at Emily, who was watching everything in silence. She looked frail, but there was something different about her. A calm glow, a quiet courage that I had never seen before. She put her hand on mine. We started this together, Mom, and it will end up together. Wow. I smiled, with tears in my eyes. Yes, you will, my daughter. Now, I face you and tie and say, and this is where I need to tell you something. From the heart, I'm here, opening my soul, telling every bit of this journey, because I know there may be someone on the other side of the screen passing by something that seems to have no way out. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. Why, it makes more difference than you think. Sometimes it's this little strength that keeps us standing. Later, how Thomas left to file the new documents. Jake stood guard. Now, didn't see you. And for a moment, wow, I thought we'd finally have some peace. But when night fell, and the wind began to blow hard outside, a black car pulled up in front of the inn. The same car that Jake had seen days before. The lights went out now, and no one came down. I watched from the window, my heart racing. Jake, is that him? I whispered. No. He looked. How? Seriously, I don't know, but whoever it is came to finish what it started. Oh, why not Bob? It was then that we heard the noise of the engine shutting down, and a loud crack echoed outside, as if something metallic had been pulled. Jake ran to the door, his hand holstered. What do you Tatis? I held my breath, and before it opened, someone knocked 3 times. Slow and heavy. Do you have any idea who was on the other side? Because when the door opened, the face I saw made me doubt whether I was awake or dreaming. When the door opened, the mountain wind entered first, bringing with it the smell of gasoline and snow. Behind him was a tall, hooded man, his face partially covered by a thin beard and his eyes narrowed like blades. For a moment, I thought it was the miller Ryan had talked about, but then he took off his hood, and the world seemed to stop. It was Carl, my brother-in-law, the same one that, weeks before, I had faced in Nampa. He looked different, older, more tired, more haunted, me. Jake immediately put his hand in the holster, ready to act, but I raised my arm. No, let him talk. Carl raised his hands slowly. I didn't come to fight. Ruth, I came because they will destroy you. And Ryan is gone. Ahern. His name fell to the ground like lead. Emily, who was behind me, stepped forward. Lydia, what do you mean? You're gone? Carl looked around, as if afraid of being heard. He called me 2 days ago. He said he was going to deliver the documents to a newspaper. No, he never got there. Harold found out. Jake approached, his gaze steady. Are you saying he may have been kidnapped? Carl nodded. Or worse. I was speechless. The anger I felt at Ryan mixed with a bitter feeling. No one deserved to disappear like this. Not even him. Why did you come here? I asked. No. Because they will try to erase all the evidence. And you are the next target. What? Jake interrogated him quickly, trying to extract every detail. How do you know that? Carl? He hesitated, then pulled something out of his coat pocket. A small tape recording. I heard them talking. Ruth, Harold, and Evelyn. They were discussing what to do with the material that Ryan brought. And the name of you two was on the list. I looked at Emily, who was already shaking. They are desperate. They want to clear the family name anyway. Carl placed the tape on the table. They sent Miller to Boise's, and if he doesn't find Ryan, I'll come after you. Fear took over the room like a silent fire. And then, how six? Jake grabbed the keys and went to the window. We need to get out of here now. They already know you're on the mountain. I stood up, my whole body tense. Where to? He replied without hesitation. Oh, to the Boise police station. There is safer. And Thomas will meet us on the way. We collected the essentials in a few minutes. Documents, the pen drive, the tape. As I packed my backpack, I looked out the window and saw the lights of the black car still standing outside. It was as if fear itself was watching us. We climbed into Jake's car and set off on the snow-covered road. The sound of tires on the ice was the only noise. Emily held my hand, and I felt her heart beating fast, just like mine. Halfway through, Carl began to speak, as if he needed to confess everything. Ruth, I should have told you before. Harold started with these scams more than 10 years ago. He used the names of people close to him, falsified documents. Ryan was dragged into this from a young age. Evelyn always knew. I closed my eyes. What about you? Carl? He sighed. Not that's an old you? No. Me too. I didn't know how far he would go. When I saw his name involved, I wanted to stop, but it was too late. They threatened me. I looked at him with a mixture of anger and pity. And now you want to redeem yourself. He looked straight ahead, his voice low. Hell? I want to prevent them from doing to you what they have already done to me. For a few minutes, the car was silent. Outside, the snow was falling thick. The sky overcast. I could have sworn there was another vehicle following us. Jake noticed too. We have company. He accelerated, but the curves of the winding mountain road made everything more dangerous. Emily held on tight to the bench. Mom, Emma now. Last Syria, hot guest towel, him. I hugged her sideways. Me too. Daughter, Hanzei, whoa, sit about it. Sip cut of some now. Then Chelsea Sarah cut dry. But we're going to get out of this. And that's why I tell you, sometimes courage is not born from the desire to win, but from the obligation to protect those you love. And when that instinct wakes up, there is no cold, fear, sin, or power that can stop it. Save it, because what was to come would prove to me that a mother's love is the last force that evil can face. The car that followed us approached. The high beams cut the rear-view mirror. Jake swerved onto a back road. Trying to swerve, Carl looked back. They're getting too close. Jake turned sharply to the left, and the car skidded for a moment before regaining control. Hold on tight, he shouted. The persecution lasted what seemed like an eternity. When we finally managed to lose the car, we were already 20 miles from Boise. We stopped at an abandoned gas station to breathe. The silence was broken only by the sound of the hot engine cooling down. Emily got out of the car and looked up at the sky. It seems like the whole world is frozen. Now, Mom, I looked at her and smiled. Oh, even exhausted, the world may freeze, but our hearts cannot. I stood for a moment, breathing in the icy air, and I felt that something big was about to happen. Jake pulled out his phone to let Thomas know we were on our way. But before he could dial it, the sound of a gunshot rang out. The car window blew out. Emily screamed. Jake pushed us to the ground. Get down! I looked at the road. The headlights were back, coming towards us, and in the snow, a silhouette stood out, walking slowly, now, with something metallic in his hands. Linda brought the echo of a voice I have never forgotten. The time has come to end this. Ruth, I would recognize that voice anywhere. It was Harold Whitlock. The man who ruined my daughter now came himself to finish what he started. Can you imagine what a mother is capable of doing when the devil knocks on her door? The sound of that shot still echoes inside me, as if it had been yesterday. I remember every detail, the flash cutting through the darkness, the smell of gunpowder mixed with the cold of the snow, and the scream that escaped my throat before I could think. Jake reacted first, pulling Emily and pushing me behind the abandoned gas pump. Another shot, and the gas station glass exploded into 1,000 pieces. Stay down, he shouted. No, the city will come. His gaze steady, his breathing heavy. Carl tried to see the shooter, but the wind kicked up the snow in whirlpools, hiding everything. And then I saw him, Harold, standing a few feet away, gun in hand, face warped with rage. You destroyed my family. Ruth, he bellowed. I stood up, Kyle, my heart pounding in my neck. No, so, Harold, you destroyed alone when you forgot what love was. His voice trembled, Leo, but his gaze remained steady. You should have kept quiet. That was our business. That man, who once wore the judge's toga, now trembled like a cornered criminal. Jake drew his gun, yelling at him to let go. But Harold didn't move. You're not going to shoot me, kid. I am the law in this city. Jake replied firmly. Not anymore. The tension was a thread about to break. Emily was crying softly behind me, and time seemed to have stopped there. Between the cold, now, the anger, there, now, and the fear, I took a step forward, feeling the snow sink beneath my feet. If it's me, you want to settle the score. Harold, look me in the eye and shoot. But leave my daughter alone. For a second, I saw hesitation. His hand trembled, and before he could react, Carl put himself in front. Dad, stop, he shouted. His voice breaking. Legends. It was at that moment that the third shot came, tearing through the air. The sound brought me to my knees. Carl staggered backwards and fell into the snow, the blood spreading fast. Emily screamed. Jake fired back, hitting Harold's shoulder, who fell sideways. dropping the gun. Why did zero pie? Hut you. I ran over to Carl. No. Holding his head in my lap, he looked at me with glazed eyes, his voice cracking. I, I, I just wanted to fix it. I caressed his face. You did what you could. Carl, nay, now rest. He smiled slightly. Ow, ice. And the last breath of air escaped between his lips. I closed his eyes with my fingertips. As the wind carried the smoke from the barrel of the gun, and the distant sound of sirens approached, Jake ran up to me, trying to push me away, but I couldn't let go. My brother-in-law's body weighed like a memory that doesn't want to go away. And there, on the ornamented point, kneeling in the snow, I understood that this man had paid dearly for his cowardice and guilt, but somehow he had found redemption in the end. Sometimes life is cruel, but also fair, in its own crooked way. I stared at the gray sky and thought about how memories are engraved in us in a way that time does not erase. You know, there are memories that come back in one piece. The sound, the smell, love, when tastes is sun, the cold, well, what we felt, as if the heart had kept everything in an invisible chest, just waiting for the right moment to open. Do you have any like that too? A day, a person, a Leonisiorgan, und Essio Chakter Ternia, a sitched, a gesture that never left your head. If you do, tell me here in the comments. I want to know what life has marked on you, because sometimes sharing these memories is what keeps us alive. The sirens finally arrived, the high-pitched sound cutting through the dawn. Police officers got out of the cars, guns drawn. Oh, my dear, turn around. Jake raised his hands, identified himself. One. Emily cried non-stop, clinging to me. Harold was handcuffed to the ground. I, still grumbling, but the power was gone. You don't understand. They're going to finish me off. I got closer, looked into his eyes. No, Harold, no, and it catches accords thing on. Who finished you off was the reflection itself. He looked away, perhaps for the first time, feeling the weight of the choices he made. The police took him away, and the silence that remained seemed too heavy. Thomas arrived soon after, panting. How? My God! Ruth, what happened? I could only answer, "No, we're somebody at a board show." The truth, Thomas, the truth has finally come out. He looked around, up the stairs, saw Carl's body, saw the blood in the snow, and lowered his head, more to on, and still crashed to the child. This will have repercussions. Everything changes from here. Wow. Emily was still shaking, and I hugged her. It's over. Oh, my love. It's okay, dear. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. It was only the end of a chapter, the cruelest, perhaps, but the story still had a dark patch that human justice did not touch. We were taken to the police station to give a statement. Ah, the day dawned, white sour, and the sun rose pale, weak, as if he was also afraid to appear. On the way, Emily leaned her head against my shoulder. Mom, what's going to happen now? I stroked her hair. Now, we breathe and wait for what comes, because I felt, deep down, in that part of the heart where the presentiment dwells, that something was yet to happen, something that would bring not only the end of pain, but also the answer to everything that still didn't make sense. And this answer, when it arrived, it was more bitter than any sentence. Can you imagine what I discovered when the next day dawned? The next day dawned with an eerie silence, as if the whole world had stopped to breathe after the storm. No, I was sitting in the police station chair, with a blanket over my shoulders, when a policeman brought 2 mugs of lukewarm coffee. Emily slept, leaning against my arm, exhausted. Now, come up nearer, falter. Her eyes still swollen from crying. Jake would talk to the county sheriff, reporting everything that had happened. Well, Harold was in a cell, receiving medical attention. Waniwao, Altanashu was Meshta. And for the first time since the beginning of everything, the air seemed light, but it was a deceptive lightness, like the silence before a new clapper. Mesho. Thomas arrived shortly after, with a briefcase under his arm. Ruth, whoa. The press is in full force out there. They want a statement? No. They want to know who was the real culprit for all the fraud. I looked at him. No. Tired. Pain. The truth already knows the way. Modern your style. Neocoordination? Thomas? She doesn't need a microphone. He nodded. Noon. But before he could say anything else, the sheriff approached. Mrs. Brown, we need you to sign the report. After that, no, they can go home. I signed with trembling hands, and we left there in the middle of cameras, flashes and questions that I didn't want to answer. We went straight to Seattle, to the small house that still kept the smell of coffee in memories. As soon as I entered, I felt the weight of everything fall at once. I sat on the couch and stared at nothing, trying to understand where the pain ended and the relief began. Emily was silent, laying it down, fiddling with her own hands. Mom, can we start over now? I wanted to answer yes, but the words stuck. Something inside me said that there was still a shadow around, and that now had not yet arrived. The next day, the phone rang. The NFL for a night of cigars at Tabishawa. They see straight out to the city. It was the hospital in Boise. Mrs. Brown? This is from the forensic sector. We need you to come here as soon as possible. There is an urgent matter about the Whitlock case. My whole body froze. When I hung up, Emily noticed. What's wrong? Mom, it took me a while to answer. They found something. We went the same day, accompanied by Thomas. The road there seemed endless. At every turn, I felt my stomach tighten, as if fate itself was preparing to give me a final blow. When we arrived, the coroner received us with a serious face. Mrs. Brown, in Beho, and we need you to see this. He placed a folder of exams and a report on the table. During the autopsy of Mr. Carl Brown, the Shivered cow. We found something that changes part of the investigation. My heart stopped for a second. What exactly? He flipped through the pages. The bullet that hit him, does not correspond to Mr. Harold's weapon. Oh, very sure. Thomas frowned. What do you mean? There was only one shooter. No. The coroner continued. The trajectory. The Gamnoam. Less than everything indicates a second shot. And the strangest thing is that this bullet came from a police gun. Oh. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Jake looked at me, perplexed. This is not possible. Only I fired, and my gun was not in that position. I stared at the doctor. Are you sure what you're saying? He nodded. That's absolute. We will investigate the origin of the bullet, but everything indicates that someone there shot with the intention of confusing. Thomas scratched his chin, or covering something up. I felt my legs weaken. No, a second shooter. Wow. Someone who was there. Wow. When did they send on unchat? Did you done the show? Hidden between the cold and chaos. No. Watching everything. Emily stood up, uncared, eyed. Her gaze startled. You mean that whoever killed Uncle Carl, can he still be free? The doctor looked away. Oh, that's what it looks like. The return trip was mute. Only the sound of the engine and the wind against the glass. Inside me, noir. Something pulse with force, fear. Yes, but also a bitter feeling of déjà vu. The story was not over, and the more I tried to get away from her, the more she pulled me back. When we got home, the phone rang nonstop. It was the press. It was the police. It was the whole world wanting answers. But I just wanted peace. I turned everything off. Emily went to her room. Thomas stayed for a while, chatting with Jake in the kitchen. Someone was at that post. Ruth. Wow, he said at last, and I knew what I was doing. I looked out the window at the reflection of the cold night. What, it was never about money. Thomas, what if it was something bigger, something personal? He looked at me. No, eyes, curious. Why do you say that? Because I know this kind of evil. Thomas, he is not content to take what is his. He wants to see you bleed. He wants to see you break inside. I ran my hand over my face, trying to hold back my fatigue, but not going to go broke. Not after all. I stood, staring at the old photograph on the shelf. Me, Emily as a child, Wayne, and my husband, before everything went wrong. I touched the frame and felt a strange twinge in my chest. Do you know what's sadder? I asked, without waiting for an answer. It's realizing that we spend our whole lives believing that we know people, but we only find out who they are when love ends. It was at that moment that I realized a detail that had previously escaped me. In the photo, behind us, in the background, was Carl, in there, Idonchobe, and next to him, a man I had never noticed properly. His face was half turned away, but his gaze was unmistakable. Cold, nay, a depressing chase of down, empty. A shiver went up my spine. Ah. I took a magnifying glass from the drawer and brought my face closer to the image. And when I realized who that man was, my legs almost didn't support me. My God. Now, Hanadamadas, I whispered. No. Jake and Thomas turned around. Ruth and Lentau. What's wrong? I stood up slowly, holding the picture. He was there from the beginning, in all our lives. They got closer. Who? Well, Ruth. I looked at them. My voice breaking. The second man in the scene. Whoa. The second man in the scene. The one who shot Carl. And he was someone I thought was dead. Can you imagine what it's like to find out that the past you buried comes back to stare you in the eye? Well, that's exactly what I was waiting for in that photo. I stood still, with the photograph in my hands, my heart beating loudly in my chest, as if the sound was going to fill the whole house. That face in the image, half covered by shadow, had the same features of someone I swore I would never see again. Thomas noticed the change in my countenance. Ruth, who is this man? I took a deep breath, trying to find a voice. It's Frank, I muttered. Jake approached. Frank who? I looked at him, feeling the past open up like an old wound. Frank Davis, my husband's best friend. He died more than 20 years ago. At least, that's what they said. Thomas frowned. Lily, are you sure? I nodded slowly. Absolute. I would recognize that look anywhere. He was Emily's godfather. Well, until I won. He was present when she was born, when my husband fell ill, and then disappeared without a trace. Silence took over the room, heavy, almost suffocating. Jake took the photo and watched carefully. If as alive and was in the scene, it changes everything. I sat down, trying to control the tremor in my hands. Frank has always had a connection with Harold. They were business partners, even before Ryan was born. I thought it was just friendship. But what if it was more than that? What if he never died and spent all those years hiding, protecting their dirt? Thomas began to walk from one side to the other. That would explain the shooting. Someone who knew what he was doing, who knew the terrain, who was there to make sure Harold wasn't arrested alive. Jake picked up the phone. I'm going to send this photo to the department. If he's alive, well, find it. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Frank was smart, cold, the kind of man who never left a trace, but was always one step ahead. Jake, I said, he won't be found like that. If he's still here, it's because he wants us to know. Emily, Anne, who until then had been listening to everything quietly, stood up slowly. Oh, Mom, this Frank, was he good to us? I swallowed hard. It was, or I thought it was. He helped me a lot when his father got sick. He was the kind of man who could say the right words and hide the wrong ones. She looked me in the eyes. And why would he do that to us? I took a deep breath. Because his love was never for us. Daughter, nice, and now, time to you come. It was for power. Man and soon. I spent the rest of the night without sleep. I sat in the kitchen, the lamp on, looking at the photo over and over again, trying to understand how a man who was part of our life could have come back to hurt again. Around 3 in the morning, did you eyes? How can I sound? I heard a noise coming from the backyard. What do you hold at? I got up slowly, grabbed the flashlight, and went to the back door. What to the hell? The cold wind came through the cracks, and for a second I thought it was just the sound of the trees. But then I saw it, an envelope on the same black paper as the first threat, in the corner. My name. The letters trembled, as if they had been written in a hurry. I opened it carefully. Inside, a single sentence. You should have let the dead sleep. My body froze. It was his handwriting. Frank, the same elongated F, the same firm stroke. I felt the flashlight slip out of my hand and fall to the ground. The noise woke Jake, who came running. Ruth, what happened? I handed him the paper. What did you come? He knows where we are. Jake looked out the window. This is not a game. Ruth, how? As hunting you? I shook my head, but something inside me said that it wasn't just that. No, Jake. He wants me to see him. He wants me to remember. Thomas arrived shortly after, called in haste. Ruth, the forensic examination confirmed. The bullet that killed Carl was fired from a gun registered in the name of a man with a false document. But the serial number refers to a lot bought 25 years ago. A lot that belonged to Frank Davis' old firm. The ground seemed to disappear under my feet. Everything fell into place. His disappearance, the connection with Harold, what? The sudden appearance in the photo, how? He never left. I whispered, now. He was here the whole time. Jake looked at me seriously. So we need to get you out of here. Today. Bye. But I refused. No, this story started with me, and it will end with me. Emily held my hand, afraid. Mom, don't do that. It's dangerous. I looked at her and said calmly, don't say it, can't see one hound. Believe there. Was it a sometime the plastic time? When someone tries to erase our history, the only way to win is to look the past in the eye. And that's exactly what I planned to do. I spent the next day rummaging through old boxes in the basement, looking for anything that would connect Frank to my husband. I found old letters, business records, and a photograph of the two of them together. The same smiles, the same confidence. On the back, a dedication. Now, for all that we have built, and for what we will still destroy. The words chilled me inside. That was not friendship. It was a pact, and my husband, unknowingly, had been used as a shield for something much bigger. I went to the window and watched the sunset, the sky turning orange behind the trees, and I thought about how time is a silent judge. He waits, but when the time comes, he charges. I knew that Frank's time would come, and that I would be the witness. In the evening, I received a call without a number. I answered with bated breath. "Ruth," and said the voice on the other end, hoarse, tired. "I warned you not to mess with it." My whole body froze. "Frank," I whispered. "No, I whispered." He laughed, a dry sound. "No, this. You still recognize my voice. Do you know what I like most about you, Ruth? It's just that I never knew what real fear was. But he will learn." The line dropped. I stood still, the phone in my hand, listening to the silence that remained. Outside, the wind picked up, and the street lights began to flicker. I looked at Emily sleeping on the couch and made a silent promise. He wouldn't touch her. Never again. But what I didn't know, and what I would discover a few hours later, is that the past had a cruel way of coming back, and this time it would come not only with threats, but with a hidden truth that would change everything I thought I knew about my husband's death. Are you ready to know what really happened that night 20 years ago? I spent the night awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to the wind blow on the window and the clock ticking the hours as if counting the steps of my anguish. Frank's voice still echoed inside me, as if he were standing there, on the other side of the door, watching me. Every word of his, every pause, sounded like a veiled promise. "You still don't know what real fear is." It was the kind of phrase that you can't get out of your head. You know, we pretend to forget, but the heart keeps repeating it. When the sun started to rise, I got up and went straight to the kitchen. I made strong coffee, one of those that burn the throat, and stood there, watching the steam rise. Emily came downstairs shortly after, her eyes swollen. "Mom, you didn't sleep, did you?" I smiled slightly. There are things that we can't rest until we understand." I sat with her at the table and told her everything. The call, nay, when sudden, how, the voice, the certainty that Frank was alive and around. She looked at me scared. "No, Mom, we should get out of here." I shook my head. "No." "And let him win again?" "But no. Now it's our turn to make him run." I took the box of old letters and showed her the dedication I found. His father died, believing that Frank was a friend, but I think he discovered something before the end. Emily flipped through the pages, her hands trembling. Between the papers, a small, rusty key fell. We stared at each other, in silence. "Have you seen this key before?" I asked. "No." She denied it. Then something inside of me ignited. He kept a locked box in the office. We never thought so after he left. I ran to the attic, among boxes covered in dust, and started looking. After almost an hour, Rejection. I found it. A dark wooden box with a small lock hidden behind a tool chest. I inserted the key and heard the click. Inside, there were documents, photos, and a cassette tape with the name Frank, 2004. My heart raced. I took everything to the living room, connected the old recorder, and pressed play. The voice that came out was my husband's. If anyone finds this, it's because things got out of hand. Frank is not who he says he is. Has involved with Harold in something big. Money laundering. Fake real estate. Maybe more. I tried to warn him, but he threatened me. He said that if I spoke, Emily would pay the price. If something happens to me, well, be not so signal. I tell you, look for the name Blue Ridge Development. That's where it all starts. The recording ended with a knocking sound, like a door being broken into. Emily brought her hands to her mouth. Emily brought her hands to her mouth. My God. He knew. I stood still, unable to breathe properly. That recording was proof that my husband did not die of illness, as I was led to believe. He was silenced. Knew. And now I had in my hands the key to dig up the whole truth. Jake arrived soon after, and when he heard the tape, he was in shock. Ruth, run. This is material for the federal investigation. If that name still exists, we can trace it. I nodded. But we don't have time. Frank already knows that we are too close. Thomas agreed. He's going to try to eliminate any trace. That's when I decided. And you're down to Yoga, aber you couldn't Howard. Decided, if he thinks he can scare me, he'll have to look me in the eye. I'll go to him. Jake tried to stop me. You can't do it alone. I looked hard at him. Jake, none. My whole life has been about protecting others. Now it's about facing it. I'm not going to run anymore. And it's funny, and sometimes when we reach that point where fear becomes strength, something changes inside the soul. The pain that once made you fall starts to push you forward. It is as if the heart said, now, enough is enough. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like this video and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think, because maybe someone needs to hear that you can still start over, even when the past tries to bury you. Jake was able to locate the address of Blue Ridge Development. It was an old abandoned farm on the outskirts of Twin Falls, Idaho, the same state where it all began. Frank's name was listed as the owner, but with a forged document. We went there in the late afternoon, with Thomas driving and Jake armed. Emily stayed home, promising to call me every hour. The path was long and lonely, flanked by bare trees. The wind blowing as if pushing us away. When we arrived, the sun was already hiding behind the mountains. The farm was down, surrounded by tall weeds, the gate rusty, and a broken sign swaying. We entered slowly, with the lanterns on. The air inside was heavy. with a musty smell and abandonment. But it didn't take long for us to realize that we weren't alone. The floor creaked strangely, and a figure passed through the corridor at the back. Jake raised his gun. "Show your hands," he shouted. "Hey!" A silence. Then a voice answered. Cold, quiet, new. "You really came, Ruth?" I knew I wouldn't resist. The sound came from upstairs. My whole body trembled. It was him, Frank. Ha! We climbed slowly, step by step, the sound of our footsteps echoing. New bow. When I reached the top, he was there, one, leaning against the broken window. His face scarred by time, but the same sharp gaze. "You should have left it in the past," he said. "No, iron approaches with a half smile. And you should have let my husband live." I replied. "I said, want cow till Daisy chair." He gave a short laugh. "Alas, tonkatsi, mudekani sell. Alone, too." Her husband was weak. I didn't know how to play the game. But you, it has always been different. Strong. Strong enough to finish you off. He moved one step closer. "Finish me? Ruth? Wow. You don't understand. No. Only one left. Everyone else died trying to stop me." Jake moved, gun drawn. The architect said, "I'm a top. I woke up with a church cigar." Hands on head. "Frank." He raised his hands slowly. Wow. But his eyes stayed on me. "Do you know what's sadder? Her husband also pointed a gun at me that day, but he didn't have the courage to shoot." My heart tightened. "What did you do with it?" His smile disappeared. "I finished what he started. I'm Motinashakas, Elsias, and before I could react, he spun his body around, pulled out a gun hidden in his coat, and a shot rang out. The sound of the bullet cut through the air. Wow. And all I could hear afterwards was my name being shouted in the dark. But whose voice was it? The bullet had hit someone. One. And I wouldn't find out until the dust settled. Who do you think fell first that night? The sound of gunfire echoed through the house like thunder inside an empty temple. For a moment, everything was silent, the kind of silence that weighs you down. "That hurts your ears." I felt my body being pulled back, and I fell to the ground, stunned, not knowing where the blood that flowed from it came from. Jake shouted my name, and Thomas ran to catch me. But then I realized I hadn't been hit. The shot was not for me. When I looked ahead, no, how? Frank was on his knees, his hands pressing against his shoulder. Blood stained his coat, but his gaze remained the same, cold, defiant. "You should have left it alone." "Why?" "Ruth, he growled. "Why? They sue. Now, everyone will pay." Jake moved forward. "Now, in a summer, I talked to his gaze steady, and surrendered him. The gun fell to the ground, making a dry noise that echoed like the end point of an era. I stood up slowly. Why? My heart racing. Why? Frank? What do you get out of all this? He laughed, spitting blood. Ah, do you still think it's about money? This has always been about power. Your husband took what was mine. I just took it back. I approached, with tears in my eyes. He helped you when no one else trusted you. It gave you a job. It gave you a house. Gave you friendship. Frank looked up, his eyes shining with anger. And then he wanted to take everything away from me. The company, the contracts, Harold's trust. I was the brains of everything, but always the supporting actor. Do you think you know what it's like to be erased from your own history? Ruth? I stared at him, chest tight. I know. Frank, Nadia, I said down. I know very well. I spent half my life being treated as a supporting player in my own family. But the difference is that I never had to destroy anyone to prove my worth. He was silent, and for a moment I saw something human cross that gaze, a flash of regret. Perhaps Jake handcuffed him and led him to the car. Outside, the car's lights began to flicker, illuminating the surrounding field as a belated farewell. Thomas stood beside me, taking a deep breath. "Ma, it's over. I'm the you want sound. I for Ruth." I looked at the horizon and replied, "Not yet. No." And it was true, because sometimes what hurts the most is not seeing the villain fall, but understanding how much evil can wear the face of those you once trusted. We returned to town, and Frank was taken into custody. Jake stayed to take the report? No. While Thomas took me home. On the way, the sky cleared, and the sun rose shy among the mountains. "Are you okay?" he asked. I smiled slightly. "Am I alive? Maria, title, and now live. And that's a start." But inside me, something was still burning, a feeling that there were missing pieces. Frank talked about Harold, about my husband, but there was a shadow hanging over all of that. And when I got home, I realized what it was. Emily wasn't there. The phone rang non-stop. And when I answered, I heard only one breath on the other end. "Who speaks?" I asked. No response. Then a soft, feminine voice whispered, "He didn't act alone." The click of the shutdown echoed like a shot. I stood still, with the headset in my hand, my heart beating fast. He did not act alone. The words swirled in my head. I picked up the phone and called Jake, but he didn't answer. I called Thomas, and he said that the police were still questioning Frank. I ran to the car, fear guiding me. The house seemed too cold, too empty. I got to the backyard and saw Emily's bedroom window open. On the table, a sheet of paper. Now, note video. The note said, "By the to town, Odyssey. It ends to so does any occur. Mom, don't look for me. I need to understand alone. I love you." My legs weakened. I knew that she was not the one who wrote that. The lyrics were similar, but the way of doing the turns in the lyrics, it was another. I ran to the police station, my heart almost coming out of my mouth. When I walked in, Jake met me in the hallway. Ruth, well, what's wrong? I showed the note. He read it, and his face turned pale. That's not hers. We went straight to Frank's cell. But when the jailer opened the door, the floor froze under my feet. The cell was empty. An injured policeman in the corner, unconscious, Leon, and a window open. My God, I whispered. Jake kicked the wall, furious. He had help. Me. Thomas arrived with the news that took my breath away. The name of the person who visited the police station the previous morning was on the record. Evelyn Whitlock. Her? I murmured. Feeling the blood disappear from my face. Evelyn, the Whitlock matriarch. Ryan's mother. Wow. That woman never deceived me. Cold, elegant, nay, always one step ahead. If she was with Frank, then it was greater than any personal vendetta. Jake looked at me. Thereafter Emily. And it was at that moment that I felt the soul leave the body. The same fear I felt that Christmas Eve in Boise came back in one piece, tearing my chest. Only this time, I wasn't going to let them take my daughter. Jake. We're going to find her, and I swear that this time no one will hide behind a last name anymore. He nodded. Now, let's go. We hit the road to a small cabin in Sun Valley, where Frank had property registered in another name. The wind cut his face, and the silence of the path was heavy, as if each kilometer was a countdown. Deep down, I felt that this would be the last act of our history. Sometimes, life feels like a book that we don't want to read anymore, but it still turns the page, because we need to know if our heart will take the end. And if you've come this far with me, I beg you, stay, because what comes now is the part that changes everything. When we arrived, the cabin was dark, the door ajar, and on the floor, right in the middle of the room, there was something that took my breath away. The necklace that Emily had worn since she was a child, the same one I gave her the first Christmas after her father's death. I took the necklace in my hands, and before I could react, I heard footsteps coming from the room. The voice that echoed was calm, almost sweet. It took a while. Not what I said he said Sue. Ruth. Wow. It was Evelyn. But what did she say next? It was the blow I never imagined receiving in my life. She was there, standing right in the middle of the room, as if she had never stopped being. Evelyn Whitlock, the same painted smile, the same expensive perfume, the same poisonous look that had stared at me since that Christmas Eve in Boise. But there was something different now, a gloomy calm, as if she knew that from then on, nothing would touch her anymore. Kneel down. It took you a long time to find me, Ruth. Ruth, she said, crossing her arms. The sound of her heels echoed off the wooden floor as she approached. Where's my daughter? I asked, feeling my voice come out, trembling. Evelyn gave a brief laugh. Auntie, your daughter has always been stubborn. I thought she looked like me, but I see that she pulled her mother's soft heart. My blood boiled. You're not going to touch her. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on mine. I don't need to. She's already done what I wanted. At that moment, a memory crossed my mind. The fake letter, the similar handwriting. Oh, Frank's calmness. They were playing together, Evelyn and Frank, two faces of the same snake. You set everything up from the beginning. No, didn't you? I whispered. No, I whispered. Since the trial, since the attack on the house, while Evelyn sighed. Oh, theatrically, none. Honey, you've wanted to believe in coincidences, but the world is moved by those who know how to manipulate the pieces. Frank served me well, and now, finally, I can end this game. I took a step forward. Nihyao, what do you want? Evelyn, what else can you take away from me? She smiled. But this time there was something almost sad about her smile. You don't understand it yet, do you? This was never about money, nor about power. It was about him. My husband? I asked, confused. She nodded slowly. Carl Brown, Shivered, Night Cowbell. He was mine before he was yours. For a moment, the eyes, everything around me stopped. Her voice seemed to come underwater. Distorted. What? I murmured, almost breathless. You're lying. Ruth, Nanny, she said, walking in circles like an actress on a stage. Carl and I were lovers before you showed up, before your simple life as a teacher and your modest clothes. He said that I was too hot, that I needed someone more stable, and married you. But he never stopped looking for me. We had plans, business. He wanted to start over with me, far from here. But then Frank found out, and that when it all fell apart. My body trembled. You're saying that Frank killed my husband out of jealousy? She laughed, a bitter laugh, for love, maybe, or out of fear. Carl threatened to tell everything. I said I was going to expose Harold's, Frank's and Nine's name. So Frank went to his house that night and ended the conversation with a bullet. But the plan was different. Ruth, it was supposed to look like an accident, but the idiot despaired, and you became a widow. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to breathe. The pieces fit together, painfully. The threats, the recording, the lies. Everything had her touch on it, refined, ruthless, and calculated. You destroyed my life, I whispered. You and that man killed the only man who ever really loved me. Evelyn stepped forward. No. Her gaze cold. No. Andy. Ruth? I just took what was mine back. Carl never loved. He tolerated you. And you. It was only the woman who served to erase his dirt. I felt the ground disappear. Jake, no nay, who was right behind me, moved fast, pointing the gun at her. Where's Emily? He shouted. Now, hot on there. Evelyn raised her hand slowly. Mom, calm down. Policeman? The girl is fine. At least, for now. Wow. You'll tell me where she is now. I demanded. How? But Evelyn just smiled. She's in a place where you'll never touch her. And you know what's most ironic? She went there alone. Look for answers about the father. Noon afternoon. It's like they say, the blood always returns to the source. Before I could react, I heard a crack behind me. Jake turned. No, but it was too late. A stampede filled the air. The window pane shattered, and Evelyn staggered backward, struck in the shoulder. We ran up to her, but she just laughed, spitting blood. He came to pick me up. He whispered. Now, ye, Frank, Nolia, Mont. I would never leave myself alone. Man Sivok himself. Outside, the sound of an engine accelerating cut through the silence of the mountain. Jake looked out the window and saw the car coming down the dirt road. It's him, he shouted. Oh. We ran to the vehicle and took the other car to follow. But Frank already had the advantage. The road was narrow. The wind kicked up the dust, and the sun hid behind the mountains. Where's he going? I asked. How? My heart racing. Jake looked at the map quickly. There is an old quarry about 10 minutes from here. If he wants to hide, it's there. Now. I drove as fast as I could. What? The car shook, the steering wheel heavy in my hands. But fear kept me going. Fear and love. Love. Because my daughter was somewhere on that road. What? And I knew, with the certainty of a mother, no, that Frank had taken her. Sometimes it is in the most dangerous curves of life that we discover what we are made of. And at that moment, I discovered I was made of courage and loss, but I still had something to protect. When we arrived at the quarry, Frank's car was there, parked near the cliff. The door was open, the wind beating hard. I ran downstairs, my heart in my throat, and then I saw Emily on her knees, with her hands tied, and Frank right behind, holding a gun to her head. It came quickly. Ruth, he said. No. With a smile. I thought it would take longer to say goodbye. Jake raised the gun. I raised my hand, asking him to stop. Leave it to me. Nah. I whispered. The wind howled between the stones, and the sky darkened. announcing the end. I stepped forward, Nathan, Bob, feeling my soul grieve. Frank, for all that is sacred, Neon does not do that. He looked at me with a kind of anger I had never seen before. You took everything from me, the woman I loved, the friend I trusted, even the respect I had for myself. You can still stop, I said, on the attempted you on, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He shook his head. No, his eyes teary. Too late. Ruth, what was lost cannot be fixed. Emily cried softly. Mom, help me. I felt her chest break, but even there, now, in the midst of that horror, there was something in her gaze, a courage she hadn't had before. Perhaps this is what Frank never understood. The strength he tried to extinguish was the same one that kept me alive. I took another step, the dirt floor sliding under my feet. If you want to end this story, then finish me, Frank, now. But let her live. He stared at me, confused, with his finger on the trigger. Would you do that? I would, because I still believe that love is stronger than hate. He laughed, a short, almost tired laugh. You don't understand anything about what it's like to lose. Oh, Frank, how? I said quietly. No, tears flowing. I do understand, but I chose not to become what destroyed me. And it was at that exact moment that a shot rang out, a dry, final sound that cut the wind and time. But I didn't see where it came from. On word of Southwestern World I only saw Frank's body staggering backwards, and Emily screaming my name. I ran, Lynn, but he was already falling. His eyes glazed over the sky. Ruth, and he muttered, before plummeting into the abyss. And as the echo of the fall was lost in the mountains, I realized that this was not yet the end, because something told me that the last secret of that story, it was still down there. The sound of his fall disappeared into the darkness, as if the abyss had swallowed not only his body, but also the weight of all the sins that had brought him there. I stood still, breathless, not understanding whether what I felt was relief or a new kind of pain, a pain that came not from the loss, but from the end. Emily ran toward me, the rope still attached to her wrists, her face covered in tears and dirt. Mom, is it over? Miss, he asked, his voice almost childish, broken. Nedio so. I hugged her tightly, my heart beating out of rhythm. It's over, then, daughter. Nay, Tom, consider. Yes, it's over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. None of it ended with a body falling and an echo disappearing. Because evil, when it is planted in fertile ground, leaves roots that remain alive even after the trunk falls. Jake approached. No, now calm, and Ingwe, panting, cow, the gun still in his hands. Ruth, are you okay? I nodded. But he realized that my gaze was still fixed on the cliff. We need to get out of here. I've already called for backup. Yawned. Ansija, Hernan Bishta Silrisunko. Thomas appeared soon after. No. With the car's headlights illuminating the hillside, the wind was blowing hard, and the sound of sirens in the distance sounded like a wail. As Jake tried to contact the base, Thomas knelt next to me. Ruth, don't look down anymore. That's enough. I stared at him, and for the first time, I felt fatigue take over. He shouldn't have ended like this. Nobody should. Thomas held my hand. You did what needed to be done. I took a deep breath, trying to believe it. But something inside me still pulled me back to that edge. And that's when I heard it. A low, distant sound, a moan. Emily widened her eyes. Mom, did you hear that? The wind was blowing strongly, and I thought it was an illusion. But then the sound came again, weak, stuffy, but human. Jake turned around quickly. It can't be. Thomas took the flashlight and pointed to the cliff. Down there, no, between the stones, something was moving. My God, as alive. He whispered. Nah. Emily grabbed my arm. Mom, don't go down. Nay, Lord so Tom, please. I looked at her. On Sigma to say her. I looked at her. Teary eyes. Daughter, how news? Sometimes the end doesn't come when we want it to. And I need to look him in the eye. One last time. Jake tried to stop me, but it was too late. I grabbed the flashlight and started to descend the narrow trail. The slippery ground. The heavy air. Each step was a reminder of my age, my pain, but also my stubbornness, because there are wounds that only close when we face what's left of them. When I got downstairs, I saw Frank lying on the rocks, breathing hard. Man or not undetermined. Blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth, and his eyes no longer had the same coldness. Ruth, Gael, Han said he had still called the night fort. No, then, he whispered, where now ground. I approached slowly, knelt next to him. Why, Frank? Why drag so many people to your hell? He laughed softly, neighed. How down. A hoarse laugh. Why? Because hell is the only place that recognizes me. Ruth, I was silent, looking at that man who was once almost family. He tried to raise his hand, but his body was no longer responding. Do you think that everything will be resolved now? He asked. Justice. It never comes clean. I shook my head, but it comes. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing hard. Nan, you should know. Evelyn, it will not stop. Nan says, she's injured. I replied, you'll pay. He laughed again. Weakly. Wound. Ruth, do you really think she went there alone? Do you think she didn't leave anything prepared? She has heralds and skirts. There's always a plan. My body froze. What are you talking about? He took a deep breath. Mom, she has everything. The documents, the money, And a name you know. Someone close to you. Who? Frank? Who is it? He tried to speak, but coughed hard. The blood staining the earth. Search the safe. The name? Blue Ridge. It wasn't the company. It was the project. The next victim. Decio. His voice disappeared. I tried to hold him back, but the last breath escaped, and the body lay motionless. I felt the cold air hit my face and realized that, once again, once, the truth had come, but incomplete. I climbed back up with the flashlight shaking in my hands. Emily was waiting for me. Her eyes wide. E. Ah, that's all. I'm done, my dear. I'll see you day. I shook my head. It's over now. But as I spoke, I knew I was lying. Jake and Thomas helped me up to the road, where the patrol cars were already there. The police surrounded the place, and one of them took me into the car to warm up. Emily sat next to me, now, still in shock. Mom, now, will we be able to go home now? I looked at her and held her hand. Ah, let's go. Yes, my love. But first, I need to do something. She frowned. What the? Frank said something about the safe, about a name. I need to see it with my own eyes. Jake approached. Now, Ruth, thou. It's dangerous to mess with this right now. The police will take care of it. I stared at him firmly. Jake, this story started with me, and it's going to break up with me. Thomas looked at me with silent respect. He knew that nothing would make me give up. We returned home at dawn. The moon illuminated the way, and the city seemed to sleep without knowing what was hidden in the shadows. As soon as I walked in, I went straight to the office. Emily followed me, silently. I pushed the rug open and opened the floor cover, where my husband's old safe was. My hands trembled. But the key, that little key we found days ago, was still with me. I snapped it in, spun it around, and the click sounded like the beating of an old heart. Inside, a yellow envelope, crumpled by time. I opened it carefully. And what I saw there made the ground disappear under my feet. They were not just documents, but photographs. Photos by Evelyn with my husband together at various times in various cities, and on the back of one of them a dedication written by him for everything we haven't had the courage to say yet. Emily turned white. Mom, what is that? The tears flowed without me being able to contain it. It's the truth, daughter. The worst of all. I sat on the floor, NL2, holding the photos to my chest, feeling the weight of a lifetime crush me. He cheated on me with her. All this time. Emily knelt next to me. Her face in tears. Mom. No. But I could only think of one thing. Evelyn didn't lie. Commentaries, Chinese, lie. Not about everything. And she didn't lie about it? What else could be true? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. The clock in the living room was 3 in the morning. Outside, distant thunder echoed. No. And I knew the last secret was still lurking. Because someone, somewhere, was still moving the pieces of this game. And this time, the coup would not come from the past. He was already inside the house. I sat there on the living room floor, surrounded by photographs that were no longer memories, but pieces of a past that was finally revealing itself. The weight of everything, the lies, the losses, the fears, seemed to dissolve into something different. A serene calm, not as the same one we feel when we understand that pain is no longer an enemy, but a teacher. Emily slept on the couch, exhausted, and for the first time in many years, I was able to look at her and see not the girl who suffered, but the strong woman who was reborn from the fire. Evelyn was arrested weeks later. He tried to deny, he tried to manipulate, but the evidence spoke louder. The Whitlock empire collapsed like a house of cards, and the truth finally found room to breathe. Jake returned to Denver. I was sick to night but before he went, he promised to visit me for Christmas. Thomas remained firm, taking care of the processes. And sometimes he still comes to have coffee with me and talk about how beautiful it is to see time doing justice. And me, I stayed here, in this same house where it all began. Cultivating a garden in the backyard, and a silence that is now light. The wound didn't go away, but it healed, and each mark reminds me that surviving is also a way to win. Because at the end of the day, life always takes a toll, but it also gives back. Return in peace, in forgiveness, in a new beginning. I learned that the truth hurts, yes, but lies kill slowly. And when we choose to face it, fear loses its strength. Time has taught me that you don't have to take revenge to be free. Just keep walking, even if the path is made of stones. Today, I look back and see that it was not the tragedy that defined me, but the way I decided to react to it. And if there's something I want to leave for you who have heard me so far, it's this: my idea or not. Don't let what hurt you determine who you are. Pain doesn't break you, it shapes you. And a heart that has already broken once is actually stronger than all the whole ones. Sometimes you have to lose almost everything to figure out what really matters. I found out, and it was love. The love for my daughter, the love for myself, the love that time does not erase. If you've stayed with me so far, I want to thank you for real, because telling this story was not easy, but it was necessary. And knowing that there is someone on the other side, listening to me with an open heart, this is a consolation that not even time erases. If this story touched you, leave a like, because for me, it's like a hug that warms you up and says I'm with you. And if you want to come back for a coffee and hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel here Every word is made with soul. Tell me in the comments where you are watching. Which corner of this world listens to me today? Now, I like to imagine this big table full of voices, each with their own story to tell, and it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. That's life. A hot coffee, a long silence, and a good story to warm your chest. Don't go away yet. Not it town. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.